Okay, so you know how sometimes you just like really look at something and wonder how it came to be?
Hmm.
Like that's how I feel about woven fabrics. It's like,
Yeah.
how did that become the shirt on my back? So today we are going deep on weaving textile technicians.
Yeah, it's a career that most people don't really think about, but it's a really interesting blend of like art and engineering and like old school craftsmanship.
Right, and like way more high tech than you might think.
Oh, absolutely.
When we were prepping for this deep dive, I was looking at RoleCatcher,
Mm.
and they had some really great info on this career path. And one thing they emphasized was like the mental gymnastics involved in this role. You're not just like pushing buttons, you're like problem solving at a really intricate level.
Yeah, you really have to understand how different fibers behave. You're
Yeah.
troubleshooting high-tech looms. You're making sure like thousands of threads come together just right to create a specific kind of
Not
fabric.
thousands.
Oh yeah, it's pretty wild.
Like, how do you even wrap your head around that?
Well, it takes a lot of attention to detail, technical know-how, and honestly a bit of an artistic eye as well.
Right. It's like you're weaving together science and technology with like genuine artistry.
Exactly.
And speaking of art, I've been seeing a lot more clothing brands talking about their like eco-friendly fabrics and like their sustainable practices.
Right.
So what's Rollcatcher saying about how this big push for sustainability is actually impacting the work of a weaving textile technician?
Well, it's changing like everything from the materials they use to the actual way they have to operate.
Okay.
Like think about bamboo fiber, for example.
Okay.
That's becoming like a really popular, sustainable alternative to cotton.
Right.
But it requires a whole different set of weaving techniques because the fibers are just so different.
Right. So it's like learning a whole new language, but with like threads instead of words.
Yeah, you could say that.
So let's like step into the shoes of a textile technician for a minute.
Okay.
What's a typical day like for them? What's the work environment actually like?
So it's definitely more of like a factory floor than a design studio. You're going to be on your feet a lot, working with heavy machinery,
Uh-huh.
and it can get pretty noisy. Like Rollcatcher doesn't really sugarcoat the physical demands of the job at all.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like there's also a certain rhythm to it.
Oh,
Like the
yeah.
whirring of the looms, the like careful threading of yarns, seeing a roll of perfectly woven fabric come out at the end. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's got to be a real sense of accomplishment in that. Like you're taking these raw materials and turning them into something tangible and often really beautiful.
Yeah. And that's where the creative satisfaction comes in.
Yeah.
Even though there are those repetitive elements to the work, you're still using your skills and your knowledge to troubleshoot problems and experiment with different settings. You're basically bringing a textile designer's vision to life.
So it's like a blend of precision and artistry all happening within this like organized chaos of a textile mill. And this is an industry that's only getting like more advanced and more demanding as we go. Like Rollcatcher actually highlighted some pretty interesting trends in terms of automation and how that's changing the game for weaving textile technicians.
Definitely.
So let's dive into that because it sounds like automation could be both exciting and a little intimidating if you were considering this as a career.
Oh, for sure. Like it has the potential to completely change those day-to-day tasks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine instead of having to manually thread hundreds of individual yarns,
Right.
a technician could be like overseeing this computer-controlled system that does it for them. But that doesn't at all mean that the job is becoming obsolete.
Right.
Like far from it.
Just shifting the skill set.
Exactly. You're no longer just a mechanic. You're like a programmer. You're this troubleshooter for these incredibly complex systems.
And that's something that Rollcatcher really emphasized, the need for adaptability and this willingness to constantly learn new technology.
Yeah, you got to be on top of your game.
So it sounds like this career is like a constant learning curve. So for someone who might be considering this path, what are some of the other pros and cons they should be aware of?
Well, I mean, we talked about the creative satisfaction, the hands-on work, the fact that you're part of this industry that's like constantly evolving.
Hmm.
But Rollcatcher is also upfront about the downsides too.
Okay.
The hours can be really long, the work can be physically demanding, and the career advancement opportunities can be kind of limited depending on like the specific mill or company.
Right. So it's important to kind of weigh all those factors and see if it lines up with your personal goals and your priorities.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's where like understanding that typical career trajectory can be really helpful. Like Rollcatcher lays out a pretty clear career ladder for weaving textile technicians. So let's unpack that a bit so our listeners can get a sense of like the potential growth path in this field.
Yeah, you can definitely work your way up.
Okay, so like tell me more about that. What are some paths a weaving textile technician could take if they really want to like level up in their career?
Well, if you're someone who's like super into the materials themselves, like those bamboo fibers we were talking about earlier,
Yay!
you could become like a material specialist.
Okay.
So you'd be like the go-to expert on all the different yarn types, different blends, how they behave during the weaving
Oh,
process.
that's cool. So you'd be like experimenting with new sustainable materials, figuring out how to make them work beautifully and efficiently on like a huge scale.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Or, maybe you're more of a problem solver by nature, someone
Yeah.
who loves optimizing those processes,
Mm.
making sure things run smoothly. Then you can move into like production planning.
Okay, so instead of working directly with the looms, you're kind of overseeing the whole flow of the factory, right?
Yeah.
Making sure the right materials are there at the right time, everything's running smoothly.
Exactly. You'd be using your deep knowledge of the whole weaving process to like streamline production, reduce waste, make sure all those looms are humming along.
Yeah.
A totally different skill set, way more analytical and big picture oriented.
This is what I love about these deep dives, like uncovering these hidden complexities within a career that I feel like a lot of people would just kind of glance over. Like it's not just about knowing how to operate a machine. It's like understanding this whole ecosystem.
And it's always changing, especially with this push for more sustainable practices. Imagine being like at the forefront of that, figuring out how to make the whole textile industry more eco-friendly, like from the ground up.
Okay, so let's say someone is listening and they are like totally captivated by this career path.
Mm-hmm.
They are ready to dust off the resume and apply for a weaving textile technician position.
Okay.
What are some curveball interview questions that RoleCatcher suggests people prep for?
So definitely brush up on the basics. Like, be able to describe your experience with different weaving machines, troubleshoot common problems, understand different fabric constructions like twill or satin weaves.
Right, like the
Fundamentals.
yeah. But then RoleCatcher throws in some real brain teasers too. Oh, I love a good curveball. Give me an example. Like, what kind of question would really make a candidate's mind spin like a high-speed loom?
Okay, so one question that really stood out to me was, have you ever developed new weaving techniques or processes to improve production efficiency?
Whoa, okay, so that's not your typical tell us about your greatest strength question at all.
Nope.
They are really looking for innovators, people who are constantly thinking about how to do things better.
Yeah, they want someone who's not afraid to experiment,
Hmm.
who's passionate about the craft,
Yeah.
and always trying to like push the boundaries of what's possible in textile production.
So it's clear that being a weaving textile technician, it's so much more than just a job.
Mm.
It's a career with like real depth and so much potential if you're someone who's drawn to that artistry, but also those technical challenges.
Yeah, for sure.
But what about like the ethical side of things? We've touched on sustainability, but the fashion industry in particular has faced its share of criticisms, right?
No, definitely. That's a really important point. We can't talk about textile production without talking about the ethical considerations, especially these days.
Right, we've all heard about fast fashion and the environmental impact, questionable labor practices, mountains of clothes ending up in landfills. It can feel kind of overwhelming.
It's true,
Huh?
but it also presents this like incredible opportunity for someone who's just entering this field.
Okay.
Imagine being part of the solution, using your skills and your passion
Yeah.
to like drive positive change from within.
Yeah, like actually making a difference.
Exactly. And it's not just wishful thinking. We are seeing these shifts happen.
Right.
Consumers are becoming so much more aware of where their clothes come from, how they're made.
Mhm.
They're demanding that transparency, that sustainability, and that puts pressure on brands to step up.
And that's where like a skilled weaving textile technician armed with all this technical expertise and this passion for sustainability could really make a difference, right?
Totally. Imagine like developing these innovative new weaving techniques that minimize waste or like incorporating recycled materials into these high quality fabrics.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thinking we need.
It's like you're a problem solver and a pioneer all in one. You're not just following the trends, you're creating them.
And it's not just the environmental impact either. There's a huge opportunity to advocate for better labor practices within the industry,
Right.
making sure people are getting paid fairly,
Mm.
that they have safe working conditions, like throughout the whole supply chain.
It's about using your position to make a real positive impact on the planet and the people who are making these fabrics.
Exactly.
That's pretty inspiring.
It really is. It shows you this career path.
Yeah.
It can be so much more than just a job. You're combining your skills, your values to contribute to a better future for fashion.
Wow, we really have unraveled the world of textile technicians today.
Yeah, we really went deep.
Who knew there was so much to it, like something as simple as woven fabric?
Right. Every thread has a story.
And now it's like I can't even look at a shirt the same way.
I know, right?
It makes you appreciate the artistry, the craftsmanship, all the thought that goes into it, and hopefully someone listening will be inspired to maybe weave their own thread into this industry.
I hope so. There's so much potential out there.
Absolutely. That's a wrap on today's deep dive.
Have a good one.
Until next time, stay curious.